Hi, this is Steve Rothery of Marillion and Bioscope. You're watching Sonic Perspectives.
Hey, that was Thorsten Questioning of Tangerine, and you're watching Sonic Perspective.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo, and my guests today are Steve Rothery from Marillion and Thorsten Questioning of Tangerine Dream. Together, they form a duo called Bioscope. Steve and Thorsten, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Hey, thanks for
Yeah,
having us.
so let's try to alternate the questions to keep you both engaged. Let me start with Thorsten. We're here, of course, to talk about Bioscope, which I understand took a while to be completed. I know you and Steve played together with Tangerine Dream, and then the material dates back to 2020, right?
Yes, so first time we met was on the cruise festival called Cruise to the Edge in
Yeah,
2014. And after that, it took around 5 years. And we met before a Marillion concert in Berlin at Palace just for coffee and just to say hello and maybe, yeah, think about making some music together without saying it's an album, something like that. So,
right.
some months after that, Steve visited me in my first studio, old studio, for a couple of days, and then we met normally once a year. So, some months later, I had some solo shows in London and Nottingham. So, a part of my live set modular synths were in the UK, and
Mhm.
we just took the opportunity to record in a session in the Marillion studio, the record club in mid England, and then because of our ti yeah concert time frame wise
Yeah,
schedules, we normally met in December. We skipped 1 year while the pandemic,
yeah,
and always for 3, 4, 5, 6 days around that. And last year, in December, we had the kind of crystallized version of what could have been an album, because there was no plan. But after all the years just recording music, there was obvious that this should be an album, in a way. And
yeah,
then we talked about adding a human drummer to it, because in the older arrangements where there was loopy type of stuff,
yeah,
electronic percussion, some four on the floors, and and we watched a lot of YouTube videos of drummer we could imagine to work with, and so we came to Alex Reeves from Album, and this was the last part of the album. We recorded this in February in London
mm,
in his studio. Steve were there, and I flew over to London. It was recorded in 2 days, 1.5 day editing in addition, and now we have, after 6 years and probably around and less than 2 months together in one room, an album.
yeah, yeah. Well, and Steve, let me ask you, you both have distinct musical identities. Blending the progressive rock guitar with the Berlin School electronica into a coherent sound and actually realizing, hey, this should be an album. What was the process of achieving that? And did you change the way you approached your guitar for this album?
Um, we knew once we did the session at the Racket Club that there was a special kind of chemistry between us. I
Hmm.
think Thorsten has been a fan of Marillion for quite a while. I've been aware of Tangerine Dream back from the age of 15 or 16. I listened to the Ricochet and Stratosphere albums. So we had a lot of common ground, but we also, I think, understood each other completely.
Hmm.
But when we set about writing together, there was no master plan. It was just let's go in there and play and see what happens, and maybe something interesting will happen. But it was obvious, really, from the first few notes that it was like when two worlds collide. But there was a really interesting melting pot of ideas and influences that happened when we worked together. And on all this music's born out of improvisation, and you can only do that if you feel inspired by what you're hearing from the other person, and that was
Yeah.
definitely the case.
Absolutely, yeah. And Thorsten, was the gradual pace, do you think that more of a challenge or did it help the music to evolve? What would you say was the main angle here?
Um, so we just played music, and it
Mm,
came. And the good thing is, there was no discussion about it, no argument about it. It
yeah.
just was musical conversation, playing music together, creating music from the moment, and then working on it
Mhm.
in the studio environment. So s- it came. So the quests and challenges were quite obvious that I had to leave Steve enough room for
Uh-huh.
his guitar, and Steve's melodies are sometimes fulfill the function of a singer inside the music.
Yeah,
Um, so even that is not so common for my work.
yeah,
Have melodies above things, and that was a challenge, and that was just trying to serve the music that we built together. And at one point, often by producing music, the music itself tries to tell you which way it should be treated, and not just an ego pressing something above it and say, I like to that should be the number one trance hit in the next summer, and it's sometimes so just listen to the music and try just to let it breathe and live by its own, and try to and even try to find the sound that the music deserves, or just
yeah,
needed in that point.
yeah,
So it was just a collective process, and I learned things about form in music, and maybe clearer parts that are probably could be easier spotted as a single part inside a track. Um, yeah, and that was the procedure in the
yeah.
last, well, while we were producing it.
Yeah, yeah. And Steve, the album draws inspiration from our fascination with the movie image. And I think, well, Tangerine Dream does that by excellence, and Marillion too in certain spots, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys have specific films, director, or visual styles in mind while composing?
Not really. It's just the way the music evolved into that very kind of cinematic style.
Yeah.
Um, and then at the last session in Berlin, when the same session was deciding about a drummer, we were trying to decide what to call the project, what to call the tracks on the album. And it all kind of came into focus, really. I was doing some research about the early days of cinema and came across
Mm.
Bioscope and Bioscope, which was an early film system developed in Berlin in the 1800s by two brothers, and it just felt like the right kind of thing. So then everything else kind of came after that in terms of the naming of the tracks. But it's a strange thing that happens that once you name a track, it solidifies it in your mind, and it almost tells you what it wants to be.
Yeah.
So with a track like Kaleidoscope, was originally just called a Friday pop song because it was something to get a little bit of a light-hearted, hey, let's do something up tempo now.
Mhm.
But it kind of it takes form really. It's like a star forming or something, everything coalesces and eventually it gets to that point where um it's alive,
Yeah.
I think music can very, very much be like this, especially with this kind of music. So rather than Saturday night in G sharp minor, you give something a name and it means more.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. For some reason, I thought of 80s soundtracks like Body Double from Brian De Palma. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but I got that kind of vibe from the sound, by the
Yeah, I
way.
think there's definitely tracks. I mean, like Gentō probably is the
Yeah.
closest the Tangerine Dream, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, very cinematic,
Yeah.
really.
And well, Gentō, this is for Thorsten, but Gentō is the Japanese word for magic lanterns, the early image projecting devices that predate cinema. It's quite a fitting name for for what the album represents, don't you think?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So instrumental music should have the idea of transporting and triggering feelings, atmospheres, and moods. So this is nearly the same, which would describe a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
Um, um, Without, so it's just creating pictures in the listener's head, and all kind of remembering situations where it could be the soundtrack of a live situation, something like that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a more like creating images than the idea of seeing a movie and create. So no, no, it was created in the moment and without the idea of I'm thinking about Citizen Kane in that moment, which is a
Right.
brilliant movie.
But yeah, hopefully it might lead us to some soundtrack work at some point in
Yeah.
the future. So
Yeah.
suitable for that kind of thing. In fact, when we had the Dolby Atmos play back a couple of weeks ago in London,
Mm.
and we saw all the finished videos that this English guy, Patrick Dunn's done for us, and the video that my daughter did for Gentō, you see that in a studio with a whole Dolby Atmos surround sound, and it is a very sort of immersive experience.
Very
Uh,
much so. Yeah.
you kind of you'd imagine doing a tour of cinemas where
Yeah.
you just project these images and play this music and do a signing afterwards or something, and it'd be a
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very civilized way of touring.
Yeah, I saw something similar here. I live in Toronto, by the way, but I saw
All right.
an Atmos exhibit of the Signals album, the Rush album that was remixed and put in the
Yeah.
Atmos format by a guy called Richard Cheeky, a producer and engineer. It's amazing. You hear it in a totally different setting. You know, you have the images as well that add to it. So it's yeah. I hope this becomes a thing eventually.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
maybe if we have time next year, we could look at doing some more of these sort of shows. I think we have another one in London um, in September at a bigger facility. So yeah,
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Well, and adding to the Japanese influence, you have the album cover, which is a view from a hatch, and you have the red sun, which is evocative of Japan, the flying birds as well. What kind of notes did either of you give to the artist of the album cover?
I sent him some images and the stories of these different things, like the Gentō image
Hmm.
and the Bioscope. So that was a combination, the cover of those two things, of the round windows of the Bioscope mobile cinema,
Oh.
the Japanese imagery because of the Gentō title track.
Hmm.
So he put that together with that kind of almost like textured leather material as well. But I think it works really well. It's a very strong
Yeah.
image.
Yeah. And Torsten, I understand that this is not just a one-off collaboration. You guys see this as an ongoing thing, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was such a pleasure to work with, and even if it took 6 years, it was only two months in the studio together, and
Yeah.
so there are no reasons to stop at that point.
Mhm.
In a good situation and in a normal situation, we learned a lot in the last 6 years for creating that kind of music together, and even with now a drummer in mind while writing and composing the music, it's probably even more easy to create music, and it's it's a good thing beside our day jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to have the freedom and yeah, the pleasure to
Yeah.
work. It's so inspiring.
Yeah.
His Steve's melodies are so unbelievable. So just creating chord sequences, and they are so brilliant and not simplified, right on the nose type of melodies.
Yeah.
It's like lines that are moving and not so predictable in so many ways as some, which I normally said about hookish melody lines in popular music.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm using the word hook and melody in a good way in my life, and
Right.
this is unbelievable.
Yeah, I must admit it was quite a risk to mix those two elements. That could be a potential that these two would clash against each other, but they blended themselves so well. And I think working all these years in those melodies and the songs kind of helped the end result. I don't know how you feel about that. We spoke about it briefly, but yeah, I just feel that it helped at the end of the day.
I think sometimes having something on the shelf for a while, be it a year
Mhm.
or more, and coming back to it can maybe give you a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think that the really interesting thing with this was that we did edit some parts and change some parts,
Hmm.
but neither of us was at all precious about that. We just
Yeah.
wanted to make the best uh, album we could make. So we agreed all the time, really, which is virtually unheard of when you
Yeah.
have a creative partnership.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, and I like the fact that it's balanced. You have the more immediate songs like Kaleidoscope and the title track, but there's some epic ones like Vanishing Point,
Yeah,
Bioscope itself, yeah, which take a little longer to digest. Was it
yeah.
by design or?
It was all there was no plan
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
really.
Mm.
So the only plan really was the order that you would hear the finished tracks. We
Okay.
had to make sure that that worked.
Okay. And well, question for both of you. You two are accomplished musicians and you played on a million albums each. What is your criteria to say yes or no to a project, aside from the schedule?
Oof. Well, find something that's worth your time, really. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm getting offered stuff all the time. I mean, just in the last week, I've got two people wanting me to play on their albums.
yeah,
Um, but I'd much rather put my time and energy into something like this that I feel, has lasting worth and value and yeah, is
yeah,
something I can be proud of.
yeah. How about you, Thorsten?
Um, I think sometimes I give it a chance, but this is sometimes problematic.
Mm,
If you're in a room in a studio somewhere and you're just there to look and okay, um, when it doesn't work for me because of don't know. So there's so many reasons why sometimes I don't do things. It's sometimes hard to get away
yeah,
to go away from that point.
Yeah.
Um, that's sometimes a problem, but normally I'm just curious about things, and yeah, and sometimes I'm just disappear
fair
after
enough.
half an hour. No, but time-wise is sometimes a problem. There's so many things that are maybe good to do, but time is sometimes limited,
Yeah,
and I really like working with people that are interesting and just nice characters.
yeah,
Include okay. On the other hand, good musicians are a pleasure to work too, and if both come together,
yeah,
this is great.
yeah,
So sometimes, yeah, it's hard. So there's many reasons. Sometimes even what are these people doing in other positions? Sometimes what are they posting on social media? To be honest,
mm,
this is also a point that yeah, yeah, have an impact of the decision.
fair enough, fair enough. And
Yeah, I
speaking
know.
of, yeah, go ahead.
Just I mean, during the pandemic
Mm,
when we couldn't work together and I couldn't work with Marillion for a while, I finished up, I think, doing a dozen sessions for people.
yeah,
Um, I think out of those dozen, I think only one was a paid session. Then you kind of add the time and the energy that you spend, and it's probably each one took me between a week and 2 weeks of time that I would otherwise have spent like working on Bioscope or the album I'm doing with Steve Hackett or my
Mm,
Reverend Toulay project. So you've got to learn how to say no. I think and that's
yeah,
what I kind of learned from that experience.
yeah, yeah. And speaking of your day jobs for a bit, Thorsten, what are the current plans for Tangerine Dream, if any?
Yeah, so we are on tour since mid-March with
Mm,
breaks in between. So next, I think in 15 days something, we are starting our tour in Poland, then some days or weeks off, then France. We have to finish an album by this year that is going to be released to 26. In between, there's some projects like there was an interactive movie, but this sometimes took a surprisingly long time
yeah,
in movie scene because of producers had an kind of a view on things as well, maybe different to the director and things like that.
yeah.
Yeah, in between some documentary work for German television that those strange things that are screened at 3:45 a.m. in the morning on Wednesday, where well, people cleaning and sea tank or something. No, sorry, no, but sometimes things like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then the tour of the Bioscope tour in December.
Okay.
With Alex Reeves joining us and Steve's friend Dave Foster as second guitar player.
Oh, okay.
Two
Yeah.
shows in Netherlands, two in Germany, and then one in Warsaw, Poland.
Yeah. And how about Marillion, Steve? I know that I read somewhere that you guys are already working on something new.
Yeah, we have been for the last couple of years, really.
Mm,
Last year, yeah, Pete had some health issues and needed
yeah.
a major operation, which kind of knocked out a big chunk of last year. This year, we've had 8 million weekends around the world, so
Yeah.
it was about 3 months to rehearse for those, and so we only finished though doing those at the end of June. Then we had like a band holiday, and we started in the studio again next week.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, we have, I think, at the last count, 5,000 ideas on our SoundCloud. So
Yeah.
we're just going to make some of those into songs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always a challenge. I understand your process with Marillion, which is like jam and get the best bits and put those together in two songs. But it's
Yeah,
challenging to write that way, eh?
it
Yeah.
is, and it's quite slow. I mean, we haven't always written that way, but
Hmm.
it's with the way that's evolved over about the last 17 or 18 years, primarily because otherwise we argue, because we don't, even after all these years, we don't really see eye to eye as what constitutes good. Um, it was a funny thing that happened when we were putting together the last album,
Mm.
and Mike Hunter, our producer, there was this short list of 30 ideas, and we each had to choose our five favorite ideas. And not one person in the band chose one idea the same as anyone else. Which tells you all you need to know about
Jesus.
if we ever agree on something, it's going to be special because it's that where the Venn diagram intersects that
Right.
all five of these people like this idea.
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. And well, both of you, a lot of bands of similar status and from the same era are now what we call legacy bands. We're playing mostly old material, the classics, but that seems not to be the case with Marillion and Tangerine Dream. You're still pushing barriers and trying new things. What is
Yeah,
the secret for that to happen?
I think there's the longing to create new music
Hmm.
yeah.
and to
There's
move
nothing like
on.
there's nothing like creating something new, and we I think for both bands we're about what we're creating now. It's not legacy. It's not playing the greatest hits.
Yeah.
It's trying to still create interesting and valid work. And that's why these days it takes us so long. Because, like, with this new album, the last album, an hour before we has had amazing reviews and is loved by the fans. So we've got to try and match that.
Yeah.
Um, and that can take a long, long time. You got to be perfectionist. You've got to really push to do your very best work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thorsten, any other thoughts about this?
Yeah, but we talked about this the first time today.
Mm.
I think 2 or 3 hours ago.
Uh,
So sometimes it would be the easiest way just to play the
Hits.
famous classic
Yeah.
album things in a row. But the idea to move on to find a chord sequence that's not so overheard, or a melody line, or a sound, is the goal. And so you can only that way you can have or experience that kind of moments of luck while you recreating new music and producing new music, and like to have the endorphin moment.
Yeah.
But you can also have the problem that you could fail big time. If you sometimes you're losing the distance to your often always I'm losing the distance to my own music
Mhm.
because I'm listening to things for 8 hours in a row, and
Yeah.
sometimes um, you hear different things. You probably, for good reasons. I know that something noisy moves from left 40 to left 20 in 1.5 minutes in the background,
Yeah.
and I think that's enough movement for that kind of music.
Yeah.
No, but no, but the idea of trying to get to write something new instead of just doing a musical museum out of your band
Yeah.
is the goal, but also the risk.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always that risky element for sure. And Steve, like me, you come from an era where the guitar was at the forefront of any genre. Even pop, you had like Michael Jackson, Billy Idol, The Police, always with the guitar element in there.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like pop avoids it like the plague. Why?
Yeah.
What happened?
I think it's just fashion, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
people. I mean, there's always those bands that still use guitars in their music. There's a Canadian band called Peach Pit that I went to
Mm.
see a couple of months ago. A great guitar player. Um, so it's still out there, but it's just not maybe embraced by the mainstream in the way it was.
Yeah. For some reason, like you look at what's in the charts right now, Rihanna, Taylor Swift, all those pop divas is not any guitar ever anymore. And
No.
it's disheartening, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's the world we live in, unfortunately. At least
Yeah.
it's not AI.
Yeah.
That's still to come.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and back to Bioscope, I think right now there's only 5 or 6 shows announced in December. Can we expect more days to be announced?
I would hope so. I would hope we can do some in next maybe April, depending on how long the Marillion album takes, how busy Thorsten is, and
Mhm.
um, just have to try and shoehorn them in whenever possible, really.
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, just touring alone is an act of love, but I can only hope that you guys make it to these shores. Like I said, I'm in Toronto, so
Yeah,
fingers
yeah.
crossed. It's
Oh, I'd
difficult,
love
but
to.
yeah, yeah,
Toronto is one of my favorite cities, so I'd love to get back.
yeah. Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for a great interview and all the best with the new release and the million other projects that you guys are part of.
Yes, thank you. It's good to
Awesome.
Someone
speak.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.